right. Good morning. Here I am here with Craig Haley, I hope I say this right, the Stats Perform FCS senior editor. Craig, how you doing today?
Doing real well, Justin. You have it correct. Thank you.
Good. I know. I kind of read over it a couple times. I was like, all right, this sounds all right, so I think I'll just say it. So, um, obviously, Craig works with a lot of the FCS stuff, and the first question I have actually is kind of right off the bat. So I know like the Division One FBS, they do the rankings through the AP and coaches. I noticed that Stats does the most ranking for 1AA. So if you could explain that a little bit to me, it would be helpful.
Sure. We run the national media poll. This spring we have 40 voters, a national panel from across the nation. Our poll is out on through Stats Perform on Monday afternoons. It's something we've been doing for a long time, going back to 1990. We've had the national media poll.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So another early question I have is, when did I know because like some teams played a little bit in the fall, obviously, but when did the kind of the decision come to a full head where they decided, okay, we're gonna have a spring season? And so how did that come? Because I think it's awesome. I am incredibly excited. I love it. So if you could just explain that a little bit.
Well, I mean, last year was just sort of a slow, painful, trickle throughout the pandemic, shutdowns, if you go all the way back to the spring, the conferences were hoping to play in the fall, but, as they inch closer, starting with the Ivy League, conferences just postponed their schedules to the spring. Many conferences did allow their schools to decide if they wanted to play some non-conference in the fall. And, maybe 15, 16, 17 schools did from one game up to like 9, it varied. So it was just one by one up to the conferences, and it was just painful to see. But obviously, they're doing it in the best interest of their student athletes' health and safety.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I kind of learned about it, I was very excited. Like I said, I cover the Browns here in Cleveland, and I do most of college football. And when I learned there would be a spring season, I didn't have to write about basketball or baseball. I was very excited. So I've been trying to kind of follow along the best I can. My cousin actually was supposed to be the starter at Youngstown State this year, Joe Craycraft, and then the guy Wade took over for him. But so I kind of been following that. But so obviously North Dakota State lost, and like I said, I've come into this with what I think is the best thing is just with no biases and no anything like that. So I do know about North Dakota State in the past, obviously. So how is this year's team different from the past ones that have dominated the whole FCS for a majority of basically a decade?
Yes. They did lose some key players, the biggest one being Trey Lance, behind center, won the Walter Payton and Jerry Rice Awards in 2019. Dylan Raduns as well. They're left tackle prospect for the NFL. Some other seniors that just played in the one game in the fall and then, moved on, not playing here in the spring. I mean, the biggest difference, obviously, is struggles at quarterback. I mean, Zeb Nolan, the Iowa State transfer, has just not put it together. They brought in Cam Miller, the true freshman against Illinois State, really kind of moved the ball at times and gave him a run. Basically, Zeb doesn't have the run ability that the past quarterbacks have had for a decade with the Bison. So it may be a rotation going forward. Cam's got to be in there just because of his running ability. But obviously, you lose a Trey Lance. That's huge. And, it's caught up to him perhaps. But, I mean, at the same time, all is not lost with the Bison. They tend to figure out when there's a problem.
Yes. So I do my weekly rankings, and I like to get views out there. So I put them on Facebook and all and people were very mad at me. So I missed pretty bad on Nicholls State. Tell me how I missed so bad on Nicholls State, because I saw them lose this weekend, and I had them as number 1 in my poll just because I was new. And from what I've seen from the FBS in the fall was the teams that could score points are really winning now. Offenses are taking over defenses. And then I saw them play Sam Houston State. So if you could just kind of tell me where I went wrong with Nicholls.
Well, I mean, they're still one of the terrific programs out there, and they've won the last 2 Southland titles. At the same time, Nicholls this year is replacing one of their best senior classes from 2019, just an outstanding senior class. Probably, you might have been misled by the scores early on. They blew out Lincoln and Lamar. Those aren't the toughest teams they're going to be playing throughout the year. Yeah. So obviously, I don't think they're a 71-17 kind of team, which was the score they lost to Sam Houston. That game got out of hand. I don't think you would see that again. Sam Houston's a better team, but not by that margin. Nicholls State is still among the top 15. It's just they're not the best FCS program.
I got you. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I was hearing it on Facebook from a lot of people. So, so one of the other questions is I obviously FCS is very different, but are there conferences in the FCS? So that could you compare them to some of the FBS conferences? Maybe that would be helpful. I think. If
sure.
You could
the CAA and the Missouri Valley Conference. I mean, they like to call themselves the SEC of the FCS level, and they've been given that nickname, as well. Those are the 2 power ones, along with the Big Sky. The Big Sky has actually the last couple of years been even better than the CAA for a couple of years now. In fact, they had 4 of the 8 seeded teams in the 2019 playoffs. They, a couple of their main schools are sitting out, Montana and Montana State. Even Sacramento State was one of the defending champs, sitting out in the spring. So, but those are the 3. I mean, if you look at, the Southland and the Ohio Valley, they're right in the next group along with the Southern Conference. I mean, going forward, the Southland is losing some key teams to the WAC. OVC is losing some key teams. The A-Sun is starting a football conference, and Jacksonville State's a true power, and they're leaving the OVC as well as Eastern Kentucky. So, I mean, those 2 conferences will take a little bit of a step back, and the A-Sun and WAC are going to be tremendous going forward. But the big 3 right now are the Missouri Valley, CAA, and Big Sky.
And so I don't know. I assume HBCUs they are FCS and they can make the playoffs, right? And everything, they're involved in that.
Well, in a typical year, the MEAC and SWAC champions play each other in the Celebration Bowl, which takes place during the playoffs. So those champions aren't available to be selected for the field. Now, the other teams in those conferences are available for at-large bids. It doesn't happen often now that the Celebration Bowl is going on. That's been played for 5 years. The MEAC did it once and North Carolina A&T did it in 2016, lost to Richmond in the first round. But generally, those schools are borderline whether they can get an at-large bid. This particular spring, the MEAC there's no Celebration Bowl, and the MEAC is sending its champion or was going to send its champion to the playoffs until the MEAC decided not to play as a conference in the spring season. Meanwhile, the SWAC is still having its regular conference championship game, and that's the end of their season. So there's no Celebration Bowl, but neither will really have teams in the playoffs in the spring.
Gotcha. The reason I asked that is just Deion Sanders took over at Jackson State, and I mean, I don't know how he could be a great coach, but I assume he went there to get big name signings and things like that. So I was just wondering if maybe in the future they would be taking part in that. I mean, they've been on ESPN already twice, and so, but yes, that helps a lot. So, I do kind of want to talk about Trey Lance for a little bit, if that's all right. So I guess the easy, simple question is, out of him, Carson Wentz, Easton Stick, is he the best one out of the guys to come out of the FCS? I guess you could compare him to even Joe Flacco or even like that too.
Oh yeah, I mean, the the FCS level has had some, great ones, like you mentioned. I mean, even, Tony Romo, a Rich Gannon, Kurt Warner. I mean, you can't quite put Trey there yet with that kind of list. And even Carson Wentz, I mean, moving on to a different organization, different franchise with the Colts, but he's been he's had a solid career up until this past season. I don't think you can put Trey there yet. I mean, his raw ability is off the charts. Hopefully he has a great career. If you're looking at the NDSU quarterbacks, they're all different. I mean, Carson Wentz was the physical, imposing, 6'5", everything you think of in a quarterback. Trey Lance, is just a winner with a cannon arm, but he's got to also put it all together. Easton Stick, the winningest quarterback in FCS history, 49 wins, 49-3. Even stepped in as a redshirt freshman and took him to the championship game and then Carson Wentz came back from injury. So, they're all different. Brock Jensen got it started. He had some time in the CFL afterwards. So it's been a great decade of quarterbacks. I mean, I think you would probably say Carson Wentz is the most talented of that group, but he didn't have the best career at NDSU. That would be Easton Stick. And then Trey Lance, who knows? I mean, he never lost a game as a starter or even as a player.
Yeah, and coming off of kind of just pivoting off of that, obviously North Dakota State decided to play the one game in the fall with Trey Lance. And I don't want to be critical, but it had to be kind of a failure considering he threw an interception for the first time in his career. I obviously not a complete failure, but I would think on your pro day you want to go out and show that you're really good, and going 15 for 30 with an interception isn't, I don't think, the message he wanted to send.
No, it was not his best performance. At the same time, he kind of took over with his running ability, which, bodes him well. I mean, obviously that only takes you so far on the next level because you want to avoid injury. I mean, he still has a lot to prove, even though he's been, great at NDSU. But, it's a big step for somebody to be suddenly, a top 10 pick, and he really should be. But no, that wasn't a good performance. It wasn't a good performance overall for NDSU. I mean, that was the first time they even trailed in the fourth quarter in over 2 years. I think it was 28 games. So no, it wasn't a good performance. At the same time, scouts are going to look at film and not just judge you on one day.
Yeah. And I actually think it actually helps him anyways, because the big thing for me when I'm looking at Trey Lance, there's just not a lot of film on him. He's only played so many games. So either way, just one more game is help on with the film like that.
And when you say that, it makes me think where, they hadn't trailed in the fourth quarter in 28 games. That just shows you he had to answer some adversity. And he's going to face a lot of adversity going forward in the NFL, looking at different defensive schemes, big guys bearing down on you. I mean, he has to be able to adjust. And so you can actually spin it to a good way, saying, hey, he answered the call in the fourth quarter when they needed him.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I know you talked about him winning the Walter Payton Award in 2019. Are they giving that out this spring or no?
Yes. In fact, that's my company, Stats Perform. We present,
awesome.
Yeah, we present the Walter Payton, the Buck Buchanan, the Jerry Rice, the Eddie Robinson Award, the Doris Robinson Awards, all the legacy awards. The Payton one, championship game weekend is when we're going to unveil, that winner, the Buchanan winner. The others we generally announce prior to championship week. We're definitely handing out, presenting the Walter Payton Award this year.
So like I said, I'm new to this. So obviously the Walter Payton Award is like kind of the same as the Heisman, right?
The Heisman of the FCS. Yes, that's
Correct.
what it's been called through the years. I mean, this is actually the 34th year of presenting it. So it has a long history. Eddie Robinson Award for Coach of the Year also is that old. So, we've had a long run with it.
So if you could just take a second and do you guys have an award? What's the Jim Thorpe Award or or is it kind of like that or is it completely different?
It's not just position. I mean, the Walter Payton Award is the Offensive Player of the Year in the FCS. The Buck Buchanan Award is that's in its 26th year. That's for the Defensive Player of the Year. That went to Dante Olson, the linebacker at Montana in 2019. Trey Lance won the Walter Payton and the Jerry Rice Award, which is the National Freshman of the Year. That was the first time somebody has won it in both awards in 1 year. Cooper Kupp did it in separate years. Eddie Robinson Award is for Coach of the Year. That was Troy Taylor at Sacramento State. And then the Doris Robinson Award is our newest one. That's for the Scholar Athlete of the Year in the FCS.
So we are at 15 minutes, and I promised I wouldn't take up much more of your time.
It's fine.
So obviously I would like to get your predictions at some point towards the very end. But I do have one more question.
Sure.
Has there been any talk among the FCS, or I don't know if you know, Division II or Division III, to maybe stick to a spring season?
Well, it's been mentioned along the way. Is it realistic? Probably not. For many reasons. One, schools are so strapped when it comes to facilities, when it comes to staffing. I mean, when all the sports collide, schools, especially on the smaller levels, don't have what it takes to pull it off. If you're somebody who's entertaining the idea of playing at the next level, well, you can't really play in the spring and put yourself into the NFL hat. It's just too hard to do because you should be training and making yourself visible at pro day and regional combine. So it's you would think it would be a great idea because it gives you a spotlight away from the FBS, but at the same time, it's probably not realistic. I mean, athletes are creatures of habit, and they're used to playing this in the fall.
Yeah, and that's completely understandable. I just thought. I mean, I know they did it with the XFL last year, whatever, with something in the spring. I mean, I know I have a feeling it would be a hit, but it really doesn't benefit the player at all. So I understand.
Well, and the other thing is, when it starts, everybody's enthused. But, are people as interested? And I'm not just saying FCS in the spring. I'm talking about any year where you're thinking football in the spring. Are people going to, pay as much attention in May, if as they would in February? Because May, then you're outdoors doing a million other activities. So I just think it's conducive to the fall.
Absolutely. The more you explain it, the more I understand that is dumb, which kind of disappoints me, but I understand. So I will get your predictions. So who do you think coming into the playoffs this year? Who do you have right now as your top 4 seeds?
Well, I mean, it's going to change as we move along. I mean, obviously North Dakota's been tremendous and is right there. I mean, whoever wins the North Dakota State game has a leg up on everybody. I mean, Weber State, just like you, I have them number 1 on my ballot. I think they're just going to keep rolling in the Big Sky and will have a seed, probably go undefeated in the regular season. James Madison's, been on a pause from, they're off to a 3-0 start. They should keep winning and be in the conversation, but it's going to keep changing. I mean, Jacksonville State's put together a great resume. Southern Illinois, Sam Houston, 2 big wins so far. South Dakota State, if they keep winning, again, I mean, North Dakota State is not as strong as they've been, but they're going to get the benefit of the doubt for a long time from at least the selection committee, because you win 8 out of 9 years. You've earned that respect more so than anybody else in the FCS when it comes to getting in and earning a seed.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of North Dakota, that's what I think of when I think Eddie. But I actually, me and one of my podcast hosts, we got in touch with Luke Skokna, one of their running backs, sure. And he was going to come on our podcast because I had interviewed athletes before. And I always ask him, I'm like, hey, before you come on, make sure you talk to your coach. And he was all set to come on, and his coach was like, nah, you just wait till you got to go through school, wait till the end of the year. So that's unfortunate. But like I said, we've been following it. It's been awesome. If you want to give your pick for national champion, go ahead. But if not, because like you said, it's bound to change, and like I hope it changes. It's been an up and down, awesome spring season for me.
Well, going into the year, I had North Dakota State and Weber State playing in the championship game. I mean, I'm not going to bail out yet on it, but it's definitely a year of a lot more parity than we've seen. I mean, the top 10 is even volatile, where it's usually pretty firm in the top 10. It's everybody behind them that knock each other off. So it's been a wild ride, and it'll probably stay that way. But hey, I'll keep saying North Dakota State and Weber State for now.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like the Missouri Valley, they just keep cannibalizing each other, but that's often what happens in the best conferences. So I just want to thank you very much for coming on. I will probably email you probably at some point in the future, see if you can come back on maybe towards next fall, or if we're maybe the draft or something like that. But I really appreciate you coming on, and like I said, how quick you responded and everything. You definitely cleared up a lot of questions I had, and like I said, I just thanks a lot for coming on, and it was awesome. I like I said, I haven't experienced this as like spring football ever, so I think it's been awesome.
It is a lot of fun, Justin. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Craig. You have a great day. All right.
You too. Thanks.